say, tell me where you really from. I ain't talking New York, I don't mean West Coast. I mean, look at your skin, so where you really from?
What's going on, everybody? Welcome and thank you for tuning into Great Wall of America, Untold Stories, a limited podcast series where we as immigrants get to share our stories of how we overcome the barriers facing us in this country. Today's guest is Ashan Singh, a New York-based Indian-American reporter, storyteller by way of Mumbai, India. He is a breath of fresh air and a jolt of energy in the traditional world of legacy media. His desire for storytelling has placed him in front of the biggest faces and the biggest events in culture and news. A longtime friend of mine, here is Ashan Singh. How are you, my man?
What's going on, bro? I'm happy to be here, man.
Yeah, is it weird? I feel like you're usually on the other side.
I'm not used to being interviewed, man, so this is cool. But I feel like we grew up having conversations like this, too. So I'm hoping part of it will come naturally. But yeah, if I start asking you questions, you can't come from me.
That's all right. I think for me, even as I was writing some of these questions, I was like, oh, there's actually a lot that I don't know about Ashan, even though I've known you for like 15 years.
Really?
I think so. I think I'll find out some new information today.
Dope.
So, Ashan, I know you live in New York, and before this you were in Boston, but I have to ask you the question, where are you really from?
Where am I really from?
Where are you really from?
The age-old American question, man. Where are you really from? Yeah. I'm from Bombay, or more commonly called Mumbai, India, Andheri East, Nanavati Hospital, Juhu Beach. Grew up in Boston, like you said, but by way of London. So after I was born, lived in India for maybe like 6-7 months, and then my family moved to the UK, and lived there for like 4, maybe less than that, 4 years. And then we flew from London to Framingham, Massachusetts. That's before I met you. Lived in Framingham, then Brookline before I moved to Newton, which is where we linked up, I think, in early high school. Yeah.
So, what was the reason for the stopover in the UK?
I think when I talk to my dad, and this I think has kind of come out more and more as I've gotten older, and we talk to our dads more, or I learn to have more of a conversation with each other. I think a younger version of my dad was antsy. He was eager to get out of India for a long time, for as long as he was a kid. I think he was a minority within India himself. He was of the Sikh religion, which is I'm half Sikh. And for anyone who knows anything about Indian history, they're kind of treated on the fringes of society a lot of the time. And I think my dad grew up feeling that sense of other. And he always wanted to go to a place where, in his mind, other was accepted. And for him, that meant anywhere but where he grew up, right? So I think it started with an idea of moving west, and I think the grand vision was always the United States, but I think opportunity first came in the UK, and so he got a academic opportunity. My parents are crazy smart. They work super hard, and he got an academic opportunity to pursue his PhD in the UK, and he did that, and that was sort of how our family ended up leaving. If I talk to my mom about it now, she never had any plan to leave. I think her heart in many ways now is still very much in India.
She never had any plans of leaving India.
She never had any plans of leaving India. Wow. And so, but you talk to her now, she's more Boston than anybody I know.
Right. So, but you're saying she still like thinks about perhaps living in India one day?
I don't know if they would ever live in India again. Just because they've been here so long now. It's been for as long as I've been, for pretty much most of my life. For as long as I remember, they've been here. But I do think, especially my mom, always thinks about how can she go back and contribute in a way that she had once imagined when she was younger. But I think what brought my family here was the same sort of story that brings a lot of families here, most families here, is this idea of hope. And you go back to a lot of the communities that end up coming here, and they have sort of rich histories. You were talking about the Chinese American history of building the railroads and being around in the 1800s and early 1900s, and then kind of being forced out. We didn't really have that context. That's not to say that Indian Americans weren't here long before we got here. They were. But my parents didn't know that, and I wasn't aware of that, right? And so my folks ended up coming in the 90s, and it was super wide-eyed and almost naive. And I think a lot of the past 20 plus years has been kind of learning, oh, this is what it really is.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. So, I mean, I have some questions about like your parents' journey that I
Yeah.
want to get back to.
For sure.
But just now I jokingly asked you that question, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where you really from? And I think you actually touched on this on your reply just now about not having that certain context that other immigrants might have.
Right.
Like, so have you ever been asked that question, where you're from, and then but where you're really from? And if so, has that ever rubbed you the wrong way? What's up, everybody? Thank y'all for tuning into the Great Wall of America podcast. I just want to take a quick second now to give a shout out to Lunar Hard Seltzer, the sponsor for this series. Some of the best people, some of the best drinks, and they're always showing out for the community. So make sure you show them some love at Lunar Hard Seltzer. Back to the podcast.
I've been asked that question so much, I'm almost desensitized to it.
Really? Okay.
And I think when I was engaged with other people of color when I was younger, I would ask that question too, because it's almost like, okay, you get what I'm saying. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
But it's the type of thing where, like, yeah, because we came here, I used to be really proud of being born in India, which is where I was born. And so, again, naive, innocent me as a kid, like, didn't really get it. It was like, yeah, I'm from India. But then as you got older, it's like, wait, I've lived here most of my life. Like, it's I've pretty much identify as someone who is American, Indian American at the very least.
Yeah.
But this idea of where you're really from, I think more often than not, it's never meant with hate or ignorance, but it's almost the most convenient way to ask that question. They just don't often understand the layers that asking a question like that comes with, where it's like,
Right.
I'm so torn between these two identities, right? Growing up here and being from there, that when you ask me where I'm really from, you're telling me I'm not from here. And that can be super alienating in a way. And I think you, especially as a kid growing up, you went to school out here, like, you understand what it's like. It's almost like a survival tactic, a defense mechanism. Like, what ways am I going to lean into the fact that this doesn't bother me? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I always tried to use people's curiosity as a chance to educate. Like, I've been here, I promise. Like, it's but at the same time, I do like to talk about where I am from. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And I do think it is also different when you are first generation and you did come with your family,
Right.
As opposed to being second, third generation and from a immigrant community, and you realize, like, yo, I don't actually know much about the home country that my parents and grandparents are telling me about.
Right.
And so then you totally understand when it becomes way more offensive. It's not to say I don't get offended by it. It's more to say I try to approach the situation with empathy.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
For sure.
Yeah.
No, I think I agree. I don't think anybody ever really asks it. I mean, I think there's like very rare cases where people are like, where you from? Go back to where, like.
And but the most ignorant people, that usually comes first. Like, go back to where you came from, and then you'll get to where you're really from.
Sure.
You know?
But I feel like that's like very rare. I feel like most of the cases that I'm even referencing is people are just, they're not asking it in any harmful way. They might be just like genuinely curious.
Yeah.
But for me, like but for me, like, the power of how subtle this question has become is kind of, the problem too. The normalization of, like, because you don't really, because, like, look, like, white people move here from Germany, from England, from blah 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 all the time.
Unless they don't got an accent, they're not being asked that question.
Right. But like, but there's many people that don't have an accent.
Right.
Like, that moved here in the last 20, 30 years, but they never get asked that. Whereas someone like my friend Allison Toy's family has been here for like 5 generations. Like 3 to 5 generations. But because she looks obviously Chinese, she still gets asked that.
Right.
And like you said, like, I honestly don't mind telling my story, but there are times where I'm like, I don't really know how to answer this question without giving you like a long answer.
A life story.
Which is like, I was born in China, but I moved to Boston when I was 11, and that's where my mom is. So home is there, but technically home is where my family is in China. But like I kind of like moved, but I moved to New York when I was 18. I found my like identity, my best friends. Like New York is home, so now I'm at New York. So it's like, and then it's like, okay, am I just talking about myself?
And you don't know how many times I've heard you give that answer too, right? Like it's I feel like that question, where are you really from, it ends up being, or has always lived in my mind as like the poster boy for microaggressions. It's like
right.
you know that term, where it's just like it's not implicit, it's not inherently ignorant or hateful, but it's that type of thing that like people ask, and they think they're asking a harmless question, but you're like, yo, it's layered, right?
Yeah. But I don't, I'm not out here being triggered every time.
Sure. But I think a lot of our experience growing up here is learning how to not get triggered, right? Like it's and that becomes like a defense, it becomes like a sheet of armor that we wear. It's like, oh, that doesn't bother me because I'm with it. I'm from here.
You have to do the work to like make the context of where the question is coming from.
Exactly.
You basically have to do more work this whole time.
Oh, I think that's something that we are just so used to doing, right? Like doing the work for the other person asking the question. Right?
I didn't even think about it. Do the work. Yeah, we're doing the work for the people that are asking the question.
I mean, even just thinking about it now, you're so worried about talking about yourself, or like this idea of like, why would I talk so much about myself? And that's one thing of the way we were raised, right? But at the same point, it's like, you feel like you worry so much about how this person's going to receive you sharing the information that they asked for. Right. So you try to like put this coat of armor and be like, yeah, it's nothing, Right. You're doing the work for them.
Yeah. They didn't mean harm by that,
They didn't, and you have to tell yourself that before you even realize.
Right, that's the stuff you tell yourself that.
You tell yourself that, right? And it's like,
yeah.
And also, I just think growing up here, like, you'd be pissed off all the time if you like took the time to get triggered by those moments, because they happen so much, right?
Well, so like, but that's the question, is that, say like, say like children growing up, right? Like there's trauma, and they like sort of sweep it under the rug, and then they grow up, and then they feel the results of those trauma, right?
Yeah.
Unresolved. Who's to say that a lot of stuff that we're going through, like for example, I have doubts about my like confidence, about whatever, like who's to say that's not a result of all these microaggressions growing up?
I think more often than not they are, right? And we as a society, or we as members of this American society, like, if you act on those triggers, you become the savage, right? Like it's like it's a you problem, not us as a country problem who built this level of trigger in you throughout your life, and then all of a sudden you explode. Right. As America, they're gonna look at you like that's a crazy immigrant all of a sudden. Then they're gonna tell you where you're really from, and it's not here. You know what I'm saying? Like it's
for sure. Yeah.
And so it's like, I think the biggest trauma that we have is like, how long can we keep that bottled up? And it's a daily thing that and it's not, even people who I'm closest to, our friends, like, they don't mean any harm by some of the things they ask. And sometimes, and I guess this is my perspective as a journalist too, is like, look, man, if I'm your friend, we can talk about it. And like, it's, and I think if we're getting, and I have to appreciate the fact that you're asking questions, because most people don't, and so that's I try to like look at it from the angle of like, okay, now we at least get to open a venue for discussion where we're talking about something that I think is pretty interesting, actually.
Yeah. Well, so like that, just now you were like, well, I wonder how long we can bottle up for. I think for me, the moment of like overspilling was during COVID.
Sure.
I think,
for sure.
I think everybody, including myself, went overboard to be like, holy shit, like let's educate ourselves on our history, like, so we can feel like empowered by like previous examples of people in our community standing up for ourselves, for each other, because like prior to COVID, like Asian hate, those 2 years, I never seen that in my life growing up in the States.
Sure.
And honestly, like since then, there hasn't been neither. It's almost like we had like a couple years with the general community for like a couple years was like, oh, like this is important. We should address this. We should talk about this. We should, fix this. Like, this. We should address this trauma. But it like came and went.
It's not to say there's still plenty of violence happening today.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
I'm not saying the violence has stopped. I'm not saying any of the
us caring has stopped.
I don't know if us caring has stopped too. I feel like we do care, but I feel like it's talking about it. It feels like not sexy or something. Like it feels like something that is like, oh, like, there's no like for example, there's actually hinges on the next question. Like there's nothing that's so dramatic that makes you feel like you need to take action, except during the moments of COVID, Asian hate, when we saw elderlies being like attacked and set on fire. But in our day-to-day lives, there's nothing that crazy that makes us feel like we need to have this kind of conversation.
I would actually argue that if things like that were to happen even again on a more visual scale, I don't think you'd see the same reaction that you saw back then. And I think the reason is like it's twofold. I think societally, we're not the flavor of the month. You're seeing all these sort of corporate rollbacks and whatnot, and sort of how DEI is just not that level of education that people were so like, okay, we need to get read in back then. It's clearly not a priority now, right?
Yeah, but see, like DEI for me, like involves other people in relation to us. I'm talking about us
from the community. No, I agree. So I think so it's twofold. But like, so it's twofold. One, I think there's a lot of fatigue from that time.
Sure.
I think not enough got done in response to a lot of our rage, a lot of our action, a lot of our pouring out in the streets. And I think what you're seeing now is like a level of exhaustion.
Right.
Like it was like, how many more like what has to happen next for me to march in the street? What happens to happen next for me to raise my hand and say that this is not okay? And I feels like no matter what angle you're looking at it from this country, the threshold is getting pushed back and back and back. The goalpost keeps moving, right? Like it's and so I think for us as a community, I think what a lot of us learned too is a lot of what was happening back then was like, I know you got educated and you were reading and you were doing the work, but I know a lot of other people were, it was performative. It was about the Instagram post. It was sort of, we kind of became dubbed the Instagram activist that generation, right? In that time. So for as much as people were pouring out in the streets, and granted we had time, right? Like no one was at work. We had the ability to leave our houses and let the world know we were pissed off.
Damn. I wonder if like we didn't have the time where we have done that, right? Like if all that happened and there wasn't like I know it's related to COVID, right? But like if all that Asian hate stuff was happening, but there was no virus, so people had to go to work and people had to do stuff, I wonder if there would have been like a similar response, I
don't know. I do think that the anger, because it was a watershed moment, especially if you look at something like George Floyd, right? Like it's like just that the nature of that video, I think, was so jarring societally. Like you saw the nation react. I don't think America had seen something like that in video in just so brazenly for a long time. It's not true. Even there's been other types of similar videos in the years prior, but there's something about that nature of the way that played out that caused the country to react. That said, I don't think you're gonna have that same sustained response the way it lasted a summer. That was the summer of 2020, right? Like it was like such a formidable time in all of our memories. I was out there as a journalist with the camera shooting, and it was you knew you were capturing something that was history. I remember covering the March on Washington, and it was I believe it was the 50th anniversary. I believe it was the 50th anniversary of the March on Washington, like Dr. King's March on Washington. I need to double check that. I'm not sure. Yeah. But it was a big one. It was a big one for sure. And I remember like just sort of the outpouring of people who came out for that.
Yeah.
What has happened, I think, that was now 5 years ago, which is crazy to think about, is there's a level of, again, fatigue, but also desensitization. Like, I don't think not enough actionable things happened besides corporate making Juneteenth mugs and
Sure.
stuff like that. You know what I'm saying?
I tell people that I'm like, yo, like I don't remember May being like Asian month. You know,
Yeah,
growing
yeah,
up.
no,
Like when
but-
we were in high school, do you
Right.
remember that being like
No,
an
it wasn't.
Asian month?
It wasn't.
right?
And it wasn't.
Yeah,
And I think it was happening
Yeah.
more and more, just sort of as society became more aware about these
Yeah,
things.
yeah.
But I think in that moment, the response was like, the American response was, let's all put stickers on, you know, that says that
right.
we care. Like it's a,
Yeah.
And I think it was a watershed moment where we as a people understood like, hey, something's got to change. Like something's messed up here. And I think what you're seeing now is the lack of motivation because I don't think enough changed.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the work is like interfacing though, you know. I feel like there's a lot of work that we as Asian Americans could be doing on our own.
Individually or within our community?
Individually.
Like, okay.
And within our community, but like that's harder to do when you don't have that same, you know, when you don't have that personal urgency though, you know.
Totally.
Okay, so you know, this like very limited series podcast, this title Great Wall of America, you know, it hinges on this idea of not being welcome, right? And I remember my friend Eric, who was mixing the song. He's British Chinese, Grammy winning British Chinese mixing engineer.
Wow.
Pretty damn cool.
That's very cool.
Very
Yeah,
cool.
Yeah.
And I remember him asking me, he's like, you know, he's mixing this. He goes, is this how you feel? It's like, do you want to be accepted like as American that badly? You know, like does this really bother you? You know? And at that moment I was thinking, I was like, yes and no, you know? Like, no, because I don't think there was ever any moments where I'm like, I wish I was white. You know, if there were, maybe in high school there were parties where we went to and like all the girls was on like the non-Asian kids. Yeah, right? So in those moments, maybe subconsciously or like the back of my mind, like maybe I'd get some more pussy if I was white.
Yeah.
You know? But like there was never like a conscious moment I'm like, man, I wish I was white.
Right,
you know?
Right.
But then I was like, so no. But then yes, because like, yeah, I do think that there are certain like rules that I have to abide, or even if I don't abide it, people automatically like enroll me into, you know. So like, were there ever any moments in your life that you can recall there was like an active thought where it's like, man, if I was white, my life would be easier?
You know, I really used to wish, I don't know if this is me wishing that I was white, but I really used to wish when I was a kid, I used to wish my name was Mike. Like, I just wanted an American-ass name, man.
Mike,
like,
but that had to do with Michael Jordan at all, like anything?
like maybe, but more
Right.
so, I just wished you talked about the idea of wanting to be American. I wanted an American name, and it drove me. It still drives me crazy, man. People really struggle saying my name, and it's really crazy to me because it's 5 letters. It's as long as your name, and they don't have a hard time with your name.
Well, they don't say the exact way right, but it's definitely less variant than when
So
they
like
say yours.
even my name has been code switched, right? Like
Right.
people here know me as Ashan. My mom calls me Ushin.
Right.
But people struggle calling me Ashan here. And I remember
Right.
being like 6, 7 and be like, yo, Mike would just make this so much easier, man. Like,
Right.
it's
But
a-
easier easier in the sense of like so other people to say it, or so they can say it so you guys can be friends, to make friends.
Both. I think it was
Right.
just a level of like feeling like cool,
Yeah.
understood, accepted. Like it's a feeling like you belong. Like, why is my name Ushin? Like
Right.
that's crazy. It's like especially when you're hearing everybody else's name in your class, right?
Right,
Like it's so it's that's like something I think about often. Like it was like, yo, I did
Even today. Even today.
when I was a
even
kid,
today.
like, I was like, that's so
Sure.
stupid. I wish my name was Mike. Like, I love my name now. You know what I'm saying?
Right,
It's
right.
like,
But you're saying like people like still have trouble pronouncing it, but you just don't care anymore.
You know, I spent a lot of the past few years trying to be really aggressive in correcting people. And I've spent a lot of the past year stopping caring. Because if you know me and you love me and and we're actually friends,
Right.
you know how to say my name. You know what I'm saying? Like it's
Right.
and I've always felt like it's it just becomes a distraction in a lot of ways. Like
Yeah.
now
I know
you're
what you
like
mean.
feeling self-conscious about saying my name, right? So you're avoiding saying my name. Like
Yeah.
now we're not talking about the thing that we need to be talking about because I want you to feel comfortable about. that goes back to the idea of what we were talking
I
about.
was
We
just
end up
gonna
doing
say,
the work, right?
yeah.
Like we end up doing the work,
Right.
And so like it's you okay, now I've made this person uncomfortable because I told them they're saying my name wrong. Now they've said it
Right.
wrong like 7 times. Like
Yeah.
why am I still correcting them? You
Yeah,
know what
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
saying? And so at the end
Right.
of the day, it's like, let's just get to what we were talking about because it doesn't matter.
It's almost like for yourself to save that work.
Totally.
Yeah,
And I think
it's not about saving them the embarrassment. It's more about like,
I think both. It's
Sure.
more like I hate it when someone feels really bad about it, especially when they start like,
Sure.
if it's happening, they start wearing like, and then the next time
oh,
they
no.
come back next, especially the people who are really earnest. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Sure, yeah,
They
yeah.
come back like, did I say that right? And like, no,
Yeah,
but it
yeah,
doesn't
yeah.
matter, man.
Yeah, yeah,
like,
yeah.
you're a nice guy. Like, it's okay. you
yeah,
know, like,
yeah.
it's
I think the intentions matter.
yeah, and I think
Yeah.
it's really important for us to always,
Yeah.
and maybe that's again, us doing the work,
Yeah.
but it's.
Okay.
Try to teach myself to understand people's intentions.
Now, you wish you had a name Mike when you were a kid, right?
Yeah.
But you stuck with your name, right?
Yeah, totally.
So
Yeah.
that conviction had its effect, because what I mean is, think about how many people moved here and gave up their name, right?
Sure.
Because they felt the need to be more American. But had they not done that, perhaps our society in America will be a society that can pronounce foreigners' names even with much more ease.
Right.
You know, so again, I feel that's just something that I was thinking about. I was like, oh, I wonder if like everybody kept their names, you know,
And I think,
better
and,
off.
and I think one thing I'll like shout out to like Europe and the UK. There's plenty of problems out there as well, but
Oh,
I
yeah,
do think
for sure.
there's a much more storied history of having relationships with immigrant minority communities where these issues don't become such issues. Like you just actually learn it. You know what I'm saying? How to say the name correctly. Like it's and maybe that's just because the communities have more storied histories. They've been there longer. And
Wait, what do you mean? You mean like within?
if you go to the
community?
UK, people have no problem saying my name. No problem saying my name. And it's like,
Right.
and I don't think they know another Ashan, but like, or another Ashan, but like it's
But you mean because there's a lot of
there's just
Indians?
like
okay, yeah.
even just the discourse around immigrant communities is
Right.
like, that doesn't mean there's a level of non-acceptance that exists here, that is emblematic of what exists here, but
yeah.
there's a like quiet layer of just knowing how to deal with each other at a civil way, right?
That's interesting.
But when it comes
Yeah.
to my name, like, man, I also think what I've noticed a lot more recently, especially, and I look at the younger generation for this a lot more, is they're reclaiming their names, man.
Yeah.
They're making sure you say
was
their
gonna say
names
that.
right.
Yeah.
My little sister's fiance, his name's Akbar.
Right.
Yo, get
Akbar,
this.
yeah.
Akbar Khan. He grew up in sorry, Akbar. He grew up in Utah, bro. He
Right.
grew up in Utah his whole life. And his friends, all the people around him, they call him Akbar. And we grew up with, what was that show, that movie Team America? You remember that movie Team America? It's like the
don't.
puppets when we were kids.
Oh,
It's like
okay, yes.
it
I've
was
seen
like
clips of that. Yeah.
It was like
Yeah.
yeah, but like there's a big.
It's like
character-
South Parky vibe.
So
right?
yeah. And they do this thing. There's one character, Admiral Akbar, and I remember white kids growing up making fun of this name in this
Right.
way.
Right.
And so when I met Akbar for the first time, I all that I thought was like, yo, this guy must have went through it in Utah. You know what I'm saying?
Jesus Christ, yeah, especially in Utah.
But I think what shook me so much and kind of made me just sort of recalibrate how I want my name to come across is like he took pride in his name. He said, no,
Yeah.
it's Akbar. His friends at college, they called him Burr.
yeah,
And yo, I found this like so inspiring, like in the
Right.
smallest way. And I think he thinks nothing of it if you talk to him about it.
right.
But it was,
That's powerful.
it's so powerful, man.
Yeah.
And making sure like you're not victim to other people's assumptions about you, because I think that's
Yeah.
so much of what the older generations who have grown up in this country have done, right?
Yeah.
Like just been who this country wants them to be.
Yeah.
And that's some BS. Yeah.
On this note, real quick, did your parents keep Jag? Right, is your dad's name?
So my dad's name is Jugmeat,
Right,
but
so-
he goes by Jag.
Right. Okay.
You
so,
know him
so
as
even
Jag,
that.
yeah.
So even that's like a
Yeah,
shortened
yeah.
version of it.
And then
Gotcha.
my mom's name, I don't think you can really shorten it. That's why,
Right.
but it's her name is Nupur,
Right.
and people call her Nupur all the time. But
Nupur, right.
but they're also they go by they're doctors, so they go by their last name most of the time. But,
Right. Okay.
But yeah, no, my dad has gone by Jag most
Right.
of it, and it's like in an effort to remove that discourse of How do you say your name? Say it for me again. You know what
Right.
I'm saying?
Yeah. So what does America, if being American means anything to you, other than just like a citizenship, like being like a citizen of Sweden or Japan, you know? And maybe that's all it means to you. But if it means more than that to you, what is that? Like, and does it matter to you that people think you're American or treat you like a foreigner?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. What does being American mean to me?
Right.
I think it means a lot more than just having I think a lot less than just having citizenship. Like, I don't think you need citizenship in actually to be American at the end of the day. I guess that is how it's qualified on an official level. But I think so much of what, and maybe this is my like wide-eyed 90s kid who grew up in that era of like we're gonna heal the world type thing, is this idea of being here and embracing everyone else around you. You know what I'm saying? I think that's like the most American thing in my mind, and being proud of where you're from, your ancestors are from. But I think the beauty of this country is a nation of immigrants, and like what I and my family always hung on to when we were when I was much younger and they were much newer to the country, was this idea of this is a nation of immigrants. Everybody who's here is from somewhere else, right? And so I think, to me, this idea of being American is wanting to be free,
Right.
and wanting to like love and respect each other. And I think and I know that sounds corny when it just kind of comes out of my mouth, but
I don't think so.
But I think it's, once you're here, you're here.
Yeah.
And once you're here and you're ready to contribute and work hard and follow your own dreams and lift up your own community that you're living in and surrounded in, like there's nothing more American than that, you know, in my mind. It's this idea of just engaging with your surroundings and trying to contribute to this like big project that we call the United States of America in one way or another. And it doesn't really matter what your creed, caste, race, or socioeconomic status is. Like, it's really about having that and believing in the hope that is this country, which I totally empathize with people. It feels harder and harder to feel that hope, you know?
Right. I mean, like, you know, if part of what you say, that I think that's just a fact, is that this is a country of immigrants, you know, but it feels like these days, especially, seems to be super hostile for this idea of being an immigrant, you know. And I wonder if your parents' generation, there was also very like anti-immigrant like it is now in some way or another, you know. Because for example, like I guess for me like you kind of answered this with the fact that, you know, your pops kind of shortened his name, you know.
Yeah.
But, you know, did you witness your parents having to hide any parts of themselves to be more American? And if so, like, who were they trying to prove the Americanness to? Was it like the neighbors? Was it the co-workers?
Even yourself,
Even
right?
yourself.
There's a story, my dad used to tell this story, I think this is actually when we were in the UK, of him sitting in a car before going into work or into the house for like an hour and just sitting with the radio and trying to practice that accent, like whatever the accent that whoever the host on the radios was,
Right.
just so he could fit in more. And I think who it became about proving it to was themselves more than anything. This idea of we belong, you know. And so did they experience the anti-immigrant thing? They experienced it in the UK. They experienced it here plenty.
Right.
But I think what is so different between our generation and theirs was the idea of coming here with clear eyes and hope. A lot of hope. We spent most of our lives here. You know what I'm saying? We saw what it is. We've lived it. We've experienced it. And we didn't really have an option too, right? Like, we weren't running from something else at the end of the day. It was often our parents who were. And so I think we're a lot more just realistic about what it is. And so I think that's why they were able to persevere through a lot. Like, I think a lot of the times they'd sort of take it on the chin that they were being not considered for an opportunity because of their race, and they would be like, I'm not qualified yet. You know what I'm saying? Like, I got to put in a little bit more work. And I think that was a lot of my family's naivete, like just coming later, like in the 90s, where it's almost your last resort to blame your race and your immigrant status as the reason for this not working out, even though in reality that's just what it is a lot of the time.
Right.
You asked this idea of what it means to be an American, but I'll never forget, I was walking with two of my homies, Leo and Bert, you know them. One is a white Jewish guy, one is a Chinese American. And we were walking in Boston. I remember this 3 white kids were walking back, and this dude under his breath makes a mocking Indian accent at me, you know, and I didn't even hear it. I kept moving. And Leo called him out, and like Leo turns to me and goes, you hear that? Like, this guy did this, and this.
Yeah.
I remember turning to the dude. I was like, bro, like, who was pitching Game 4 of the World Series, you know, back in 2004? Like, who was there? Like, who was on the floor when the Celtics were playing the Lakers in 2008? And for some reason, like, it was me proving my Bostonness to this dude.
Right.
That felt like, I've got nothing to prove to you. I'm so much more from here than you are. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Which felt like, I don't know why that came back to me in my head, but it was this idea of, nah, man, I was here watching this city. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's like, I'm a bigger fan of the institutions that this city is so proud of than you could imagine. And I felt like such a, I don't know why that was my defense mechanism. It wasn't like rage. It was more like like, what do you know about this place? You know what I'm saying? Because I'm from it. Like, it's
well, he was saying, like, you know, and I think he was making the accent which made it feel like that you were like this foreign thing,
right?
And then you had to be like, no, I belong here. You know, I grew up here. You know.
And I think it was also just like a late night spat, but I don't know why.
I mean, I think, but see, that's the thing. That like second thought of like, I think it was just a late night spat. That's again us trying to do the work of being like,
100%.
You know what I mean? Like. I mean, like, you know, I think one thing that you said really interesting was that parents, immigrant parents, refuse to think that it has something to do with their background. Because I feel like if they accept that, then it's almost accepting that, well, if that's the case, then I really have no choice, and then I'm powerless. So if I tell myself that, like, oh, I just have to do more work, at least that's something that I can keep working towards, versus like, I just have to accept that I'm not going to get anything because I look this way. You know, I think that's like, I think, you know, when you said, oh, yeah, our parents can't tell them that, I think that's true, and maybe that's why, you know. Like,
and I think it's more like failure's not an option, right? Like, it's like you can say it's because of X, Y, and Z, but I'm going to keep trying because I have a goal, I have a dream.
That's true, too.
And the one thing that I've been told is this country is where it can happen. You know, and that, and I think my parents have been able to realize a lot of those dreams and those goals because they were stubborn. At the end of the day, they were
they wanted to get over that wall.
Literally, they wanted to get over it, and I do think, just sort of having that sort of need to endure and persevere and not feel bad for yourself at the end of the day. Which
easier said than done.
Much
not
easier
feel
said
bad
than done.
for yourself, but I think that's the.
But when it becomes
attitude necessary,
but also I think it's different for us because we grew up here as kids. But it becomes it's a survival mechanism for them.
I know. It's almost like you have to push through it, get the success, and then rewind back to do some therapy work, you know, to recover.
I'm all types of messed up now,
Right. Well, talking about achieving dreams, man, like, you know, being all types of messed up from it, you know. Yo, like, you know, for me, like, knowing you from high school, you know, seeing you on Good Morning America, just interviewing, like, Lil Nas X, interviewing, like, Billy Ray, interviewing just all the stars, all the athletes, everybody that's cool. I mean, I'm super proud, and, like, it's super inspiring to see as well, you know.
The world, bro. Thank you.
And for me, I know, you know, I'm not really looking around like that, but I feel like there's not that many, like, brown faces, right? Like, in traditional legacy media, like you're on MSNBC and whatnot. Is that true?
Yeah, I think it's becoming less and less true. Like I think like there's you go to the sort of the minority hosted conferences like American Asian Journalists Association, which I didn't even know existed until like 3 or 4 years ago when I went for the first time. And you see, I think when you see your community doing the thing that you do, and they come out in droves, then it becomes like, oh, we are out here. There's such a community. Like, I think for a long time when I started doing this, like, oh, I'm one of the only ones. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
But they're out there, man. And I think what our parents' generation who came here has allowed us to pursue jobs like journalism.
For sure.
And it's not always about medicine and law and research and things like that. It's like you can do different types of careers. And so I'm definitely encouraged by that next generation of South Asian and East Asian journalists who are coming for it and are serious about it. I just hope like that these places are still invested in giving them space and letting them thrive, because and you talk about this all the time, like we're not one size fits all. Like there are 5-10 different South Asian reporters, and me and them are nothing alike. They have different styles, they have different approaches to their journalism, they have different beats, they have different, and so it's but it is it's not, I'm not it's still it's not the most common demographic to see in the news world. But I think for me, getting to go and see the community and being mentored by people like Juju Chang and Eva Pilgrim, who are like, you know, legends within the Asian American community, has made me feel like, okay, if they did it back then, what am I complaining about? You know what I'm saying?
You know, I had that thought, because like I was thinking about the stuff I want to talk to you about, and I remember thinking like, yo, Connie Chen was like a long time ago. She was like this like Asian phase.
Yeah, Connie Chung, man.
Connie Chung, right?
Legend, man.
Legend, right?
Legend,
so you know, so I was saying that so you know, I've known you for this long, and for people, I think there's a little interesting fact for people is that when me and Ashan in high school, we rapped under green card, because neither of us was citizenship yet, I believe, at the time. Citizens yet at the time. And, you know, for me, I consider musicians as like storytellers, you know. So you were a storyteller in high school in the forms of music. Also, you were studying international politics, I believe.
Yeah, college.
In college, right?
International relations. Yeah.
International relations.
I was telling myself I was going to law school at one point.
Gotcha. Right. But you know, I think from the storyteller of a writer and a rapper, a musician, to now you're a reporter, but obviously a storyteller. What is, you know, the best part about what you do? And what is like a challenge that you find, specifically being like who you are in this world?
I love that question. You brought up green cards, so I'm gonna just say that was, I think, us taking pride.
Right. I mean, so you know, that's something sorry to cut you off. That's something I wanted to bring up earlier, because you were talking about being proud of that, because your name in green card was even Karma, which is very, you know.
And I just felt like, look, we look this way. Let's lean into being this way. You know what I'm saying? And I think back then, for as much as you wish you could have a different rap name, it was like, this is who I am. And like, and I think it was
I think it was dope.
It was, but it's also just a way to take ownership. I think, you know what I'm saying? Like, I was like, I'm controlling this. Like, you're not gonna call me Indian because I'm gonna tell you I'm Indian. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's and I think that was sort of us putting on that suit of armor. Like, yeah, I know we look different. We're called green card. Like, we're not from here. Like, it's and so I think that was us. I think putting up that shield in a way. Question again, sorry. Storytelling and the best part of the job.
Yeah, now that you're a storyteller in the form that you are, what's the best part, and what is something that is challenging?
I'm intensely curious, man, and I think just like getting a chance to talk to so many different people of different walks of life every day is like, feels like such an honor. Like I think just a couple days ago, I was on set with Dylan Mulvaney, who's the trans influencer who came under fire when she had the Bud Light post. And like people stopped drinking Bud Light because they didn't agree with them sponsoring a trans person, trans woman. And or the other day, I was sitting down with Daisy Ridley, who's like Rey of Star Wars. Like, it's you know, like, so it's and then back in August, I was at a cuddle therapy session. I was watching someone get cuddle therapy.
Right.
So it's just put me in like bizarre situations with people who I could have never imagined talking to.
Right.
And what I've appreciated so much is it's given me so much more perspective in the sense that I'm always trying to consider where someone else is coming from when they're coming to a discussion or or making a point. And so I just love to listen. I love to listen. I could sit. I actually find it really uncomfortable sitting here and talking all the time because I feel like my favorite thing to do is just really understand someone else's perspective and how they see the world. Like when they wake up, what are they thinking? You know what I'm saying? And because I think we all have such unique identities and just how we go about our day-to-days. And I think it's made me a lot less angry, if that's a fair word, just because like we're all trying. I think at the end of the day, and it's no matter how famous you are, no matter how problematic you are, no matter how what you and I might consider like a little weird what you're doing, you know, like something like an alternative style of therapy, like everybody's just trying to find their peace in this world. And I think it's made me a lot less a lot more accepting of like, okay, like the human condition is very real and we're all just trying to figure it out, you know. I think what I struggle with the most right now is reached a point in my career where I have reached a point in my career where like I have a lot of stories that are not conventional for like traditional broadcast that I want to tell about our communities, about our struggles, the way that we kind of exist in this country. And it's really important for me to show, I think, that we're not a monolith. And I don't need people who don't look like me to agree with me. I do just want them to look and be like, huh, that's pretty interesting. Someone actually took the time to explain that to me, because I do think a lot of the fear and a lot of the anger and a lot of the pointing fingers that happens these days comes out of fear, like comes out of just not knowing, you know, like not taking time to educate yourself on something. So you look at something quickly, you react, oh, I don't like that, that's weird to me,
right?
And then you just end up building this snowball of anger and rage where 3 years down the line you're complaining about something that you don't even know. You like, does this really make you mad, or have you just told yourself this has made you mad for so long that now you just get mad at it, you know? So I think I'm really hoping to make stories that can show our whole being, and what it's like to live and be American while trying to preserve our culture and our traditions, because I think a lot of that gets lost in these representative conversations about our communities, because it's just like, what's it like to be here? What's it like for us to be brown in this space? What's it like? And it's like, at the end of the day, you and I can talk, and we are from two very different places. We have two very different upbringings, but we share a lot of common experiences with that. So are we really sharing new information? Like a lot of the time, no, actually. And I think if you go back to like one of your first questions, when you talk about how we as a community can sort of reflect and introspect, it's like, how can we move the conversation forward? Rather than being like, I think one of my least favorite questions, especially during AA and HPI month and any of these sort of representation months, is what does representation mean to you? And I'll tell you what everybody responds. It means everything. To be able to see yourself in the space, man. A little kid like me, if they could see themselves in the space, man, it means the world. And it just lets somebody like me know you can do it too. Bro, I have 5 years of hearing that. How do we take the conversation forward where we are talking about something smarter? We are making the people who don't look like us, don't agree with us, don't want us here, can be like, huh, this is a shared experience. You know, like this is something that we can all talk about in a way that makes us all uniquely American in one way, you know? And that doesn't mean make us colorblind. I think it means drawing from where we come from to express that common thread with people who might not say that we belong. I think one of the big things that people don't really know is like our communities are very conservative, actually, especially in the older generations. And like, if this country wasn't so, and I think you saw that in the last election, is like, you know, like the minority communities, especially from the male demographic, they came out and voted conservative. And I hope that dispels a big rumor about how a lot of immigrant communities vote and view politics.
Yeah.
It's not a binary way, you know.
For sure.
It's really complicated.
For sure. I mean, I think that's a very illuminating point, to be honest. Like, you know, in the song Great Wall of America, where I joke about, you know, wanting to be accepted so badly that I'll even vote for Trump, you know, just to be accepted as one of you know. And my friend, he like does video essays, and, you know, I was asking him, you know, if there's any way we could, you know, talk, you know, expand on the subject matter. And the first angle he came back to me was, oh, this reminds me of a lot of Asian people voting Trump. And I'm like, oh, that's that was not an angle that I thought when I was writing this. But that's kind of true. You know, it's like them thinking like, oh, this is better for my American dream. You know, this is better for business, for economy, right? They might vote for Trump for that reason, right? Yeah. They're like, and that and feeds to their career, feeds to their, you know, making more, you know, like, so, like in their attempt to be more American, to achieve their dream, they do vote for Trump, you know, and like, and they might overlook some of the, you know, the stuff that clearly he overlooks too, which is humanity, right? Like how we treat each other with grace. It's not that there's no issues to be solved, but we can solve it with grace, you know. Yeah, and there's one thing that you said just now. I wish I could recall, but
was representation mean to you?
No. Maybe it'll come back. But I like that, you know, what you said about what's challenging to you is that there are stories that you want to touch on, but you can't because it might be just something that, you know, whoever is scheduling the stories find it too niche or whatever, right? Like, I
mean, you got to think about also like ABC News' perspective. They're massive audience, right? It's American national television.
Sure,
I totally understand.
But what's more American than like covering like immigrant stories?
But they've got their own sort of priorities and like what the shows need to make and stuff like that. So it's not to say that like they don't care, but I know when. Yeah, it's not that they don't care. I think they care. I think it's more so about being able to put these stories on a platform in a way that does them justice.
For sure.
Like gives them sort of the time of day. And I think this is what I hope to do. So hopefully, hey, if anybody at work is listening, please, like it's let's get those made. But it's I
mean, but also it's also it makes sense that, you know, because it's this is something that you care about personally, you know what I mean? So like it makes sense that this is, you know, perhaps sometime down the road, because I know that you and Brian were working on this project of like the shows.
With Arpan.
With Arpan. Sorry, with Arpan. Yeah. But so, you know, I'm excited to see that perhaps this comes out in like your own personal channel, you know.
Right. One day.
Yeah. I believe it. You know, I think as somebody that's in the, you know, you get to see a lot of things happening, right, in the news world. You get to see stories. You get to cover some stories, and there's stories that you don't get to cover. But does covering stories after story after story and like this, does it make you feel numb at all?
Totally.
Does it ever make you feel like like I'm sharing these events, but I really am powerless to do anything to actually change anything? Or is that like too pessimistic of a way to look at it?
I think one of our jobs as journalists is it's not our job to change anything. It's our job to document and let people know what's going on. So the idea of being powerless, I don't really feel so much, because you feel powerful by being there. You know, like the fact that I'm here, it means a lot to me. You know, I'm witnessing something that is historic or noteworthy enough that they brought the news. You know, like we're literally here. So that in and of itself, you feel not the power, but the importance of being there. Yeah. But the numbness, for sure. Like it's especially covering things like breaking news, and you see it on a. There was a stretch of mass shootings in the country that was happening. So I can't remember what years, maybe 22, 23. Where it just felt like it wasn't stopping, right? And you just get numb. I remember during Stop Asian Hate, like you just got numb. Like it was just like another body, another victim, you know, like, and it became really exhausting. you get numb to be able to do the job, you know. But I think it's important to keep that perspective. These are real lives, and I think that's what makes the work tiring. I have the luxury of not working so much on the breaking news beat too. I'm more so on the long form focused stuff, so like special interest features, docs, things like that. But yeah, it gets really exhausting, especially like when it feels like the news just won't stop. Like we just, as a society, are not getting a break. Then it gets draining for sure. But the numbness of it, you have to you get numb to be able to cover things like this, right? But it's hard not to feel it when you're laying in your bed in the hotel room or wherever you are, and you're like, "Damn, that was serious," you know? Like it's hard to forget. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So you still travel back to India all the time, right? Like
I wouldn't say all the time. I want to go more, man. I think as we're getting older, it's becoming harder and harder to go back.
Every couple years, something like that.
Every year, I think the last time I went was 22.
Right.
Whoa, 23.
Right. Okay. Not that long ago. Yeah.
Feels like a long time ago. Yeah, but
Right.
yeah.
You know, like, how do you feel when you're back in India? When you're back in...
I feel like I'm from here. And I feel like everybody knows I'm from here, you know?
Right.
It used to be really funny.
Is it how you dress? Is it how you, like...
Also...
Like if you don't open your mouth, like if you don't talk to anybody...
No, I think I could pass. Especially
right.
the fashion game has gone up in India.
Oh,
Especially,
yeah.
in Delhi and Bombay, people are dressing. It's super
dude,
bright. My mind was blown the last time I was there.
Yeah.
But I will
That's so
always
cool.
say it's super funny when you walk into like a mall in Delhi and
Yeah.
you know exactly when someone's American cousin is there, because they've got like they've code switched their accent type of bit. They're like complaining to an auntie about something. They're wearing basketball shorts, basketball shoes, and like an and one t-shirt. You know, like there's
Right.
like it's the look of like a 10-year-old who's like there on their holiday with their family, and like the family wants to bring them to the mall. So it's always very obvious when you know that like. Especially a younger kid is from America, you know?
Right.
No, but when I grew up going, I always felt othered. And
Right.
not, again, by purpose, but I was the American cousin who was coming, you know?
Yeah.
As I've gotten older, I think I've made more and more of an effort to embrace how little I know and my ignorance to how little I know. And my curiosity and my desire to know more. So whenever I go now, I feel like it's not like because it used to be like just family time, right? You go hang at your auntie's house, your grandmother's house.
Right.
And it becomes very insular in that way. Like now it's like, shoot, I need to know this. If I want to say I'm from here,
Yeah.
and I do want to say I'm from there,
Yeah.
I need to know more about here. You
Right.
know what I'm saying? And,
Right.
and so it's, I think, made a little bit more of an effort every time I've gone back to see somewhere different that I haven't been. Not really explore sort of from the not explore beyond sort of the parameters of family. You know
Right.
what I'm saying? And
Right.
so I think that's come with age, and it's allowed me to just feel like more like I belong there. You know,
Right.
like it's like I'm brown. I look like everyone here.
Yeah.
Same. My sister's fiance Akbar. He came to India with us the first time. And he was saying he had never been before. He's half Indian, half Pakistani. He was like, yo, I've never been somewhere where everyone looks like me in my life. I remember this kid grew up in Utah. Like,
Right.
it was, and that hit me. And it was like, I just need to, like...
That's just such a wild, like, thought, right?
Yeah.
It's like, I feel like, it's like, when do you, like, I feel not many people get to have that, like, context and have that thought. Like,
Totally.
shit, everyone looks like me, you know? Like,
So I'll never forget going to Selma, Alabama. They were doing President Obama was marching in Selma. This is back in 2015, something like that. It was the 50th anniversary of that march.
yeah.
And it was almost entirely black people. It was entirely black people. And I came with 5 kids from my college who were all white. They were all my homies. They're all white. I remember as we were all marching, and it was one of those things where like you felt it, how historic and important this moment was. You know, like you really. I'll never forget it, like to the end of the day. But I remember my boys turning around and like, "Yo, I've never been the only white person somewhere before." I remember feeling so shocked. It's like, bro, this is every day for me. Like, it's like it's like I'm gonna go back to college with y'all.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna be the only person in the room who's brown. And I remember being so taken aback by that. It was just like we were like 20, 21 at the time, and just like that had never hit me that like, oh, not only are they not used to not seeing someone who looks like me, they're not used to being in environments where they are the only person in that environment that looks like them. And
Interesting.
And so it's like, wow, that's like a double, like that's a double shocker. I don't, you know, like it was. So it's it gave me a lot of perspective. That's like, okay, this is where a lot of our fears come from, right? Like, just not being thrown into environments. You asked me what my favorite part of my job is it's thrown me in so many different environments where I'm just forced to be comfortable. Part of the reason why I feel so American is because I know this country better than I feel like most people who have grown up here. And and I really feel that in my heart because and part of what I've enjoyed so much about my job is it's had me in so many different parts of the country, and I feel like I've had a finger on the pulse of what's going on in these different places. If you asked me 2-3 years ago, what's going on in Atlanta, what's going on in Miami, what's going on in Seattle, I could tell you, and it's and I think that's American as hell. You know, it's
that is dope. I like that. I like that. You know, earlier you were saying all these people that you kind of come in touch with kind of makes you zoom out and look at everybody on like a more human basis. You know, earlier you were saying that. And I'm just thinking about how like in front of you, you know, whoever it is, a big celebrity, you know, it's talking to you on camera. They're in their celebrity mode, and then when the camera's off and they're removing the mics and stuff, they're back to just like being a person real quick, and you get to see that every time. You get to see that like, oh, this is what everyone sees, the glamour, and his life must be so good, and then back to, you know, like, oh, he's just a person, you know, like, I think that's also very like humanizing too, you know.
I think people ask me if I get nervous a lot. I think that's one of the most common questions I get. And I get nervous, especially when we're doing live stuff all the time. But
see, I knew it was a common question. That's why I didn't ask you.
Right, exactly. That's why you're good at what you do, man. But when you're sitting across from somebody, it's very easy to strip them down from whatever pedestal they've put themselves on. You know, like... At the end of the day, you've got 2 feet on the ground and your ass is in a chair just like mine, you know? And it's and to see people on that human level is, I think, what makes the job so fun. And it makes you, it takes the not in a bad way, but it takes the magic dust off people that, you know, that we all kind of put on ourselves to survive.
I think that's good.
And it's amazing to see. And it's amazing to go in, and especially when we're sitting across from somebody and you see, especially it's a celebrity or somebody famous, you realize like, oh, they're nervous too. You know? Right. Like they got to put on a show, right? I just have to ask questions at the end of the day. Right. And so it puts a lot of it in a perspective of, oh, we're all just trying to get through the day, you know? Yeah. It's at the end of the day.
Yeah. I keep, you know, you're saying a lot of stuff that, again, like I feel like this is stuff that, even though I've known you for so long, you know, things that I'm finding that we have in common. Like, you know, you saying as you get older, you realize you don't really know much about the place that you're from, and then you have more of a desire to learn about it, you know. I think for me, moving to the States at 11, and then going back to visit family, I had always been in like the family bubble too. Right. And then once I was able to step out of that, I was like, oh wow, like this is a very robust place. It's not this place that I rejected growing up in the States where people spit on the ground and they don't hold the door, they don't say thank you. You know, like I remember going back to China after a couple years in the States. I was like 12 or 13. And then like just being so judgmental back in China of being like everyone being like, damn, like everyone is in your face. Everyone is spitting on the ground. They're smoking at places they're not supposed to. I'm like, man, America is such a more developed place. You know, I was under such a like I had such a negative taste, you know.
Sure.
And I feel like part of that was because I, like we were talking about, I didn't know a lot about China, you know, because I remember years later just having like a realization, oh, there's 1.4 billion people. There's 4 times as many people, you know, and there's more people, there's more of a variety of people, you know, so you might see more people acting out, doing stuff, but you don't really get to see the people that are doing good too, you know.
And I think when you reach that age where like, oh, cool is happening here.
Yeah,
Then
for
it's
sure.
like, what have I been missing out on? You know, I need to
Right.
get hip. Like,
Right, but before you realize that like rejection of where you're or where I was from, also had to do with me repressing my identity to be more American at the time. You know, I mean, I play lacrosse.
you did. You had
I
a
grew
bowl
my-
cut, bro.
I
You had
grew my hair out. I thought
side
it was
sweep
the
bangs,
lettuce.
Bro. You had the
I thought it was-
Bieber hair.
I thought that was the lettuce, you know, and
The lax lettuce. That's right. That's what it was.
yeah, the lax lettuce. You know, there were many, and had people not been able to say my name, I would have changed my name too. You know, but I was like, oh, Bohan, that's close enough to Bohan. You know, it's like that's cool. You know, and you know, I like to think back romantically and say that I thought about that because I wanted to keep my name because I liked my name.
Yeah.
But I don't know if that's true. You know, like I don't know if I just like was indecisive and decided to roll with it because
Right.
it was close enough, you know.
Also credit a lot of where we grew up as like the kids where we grew up had a curiosity about us, and it
Yeah.
allowed us to like thrive in a way that like I don't know if we would have had we grown up elsewhere in the States.
It was a much friendlier situation for Asian and ethnic minority people.
There was and I think there was also just this mindset of like, you guys are rapping, like
Yeah.
what's going on here? Like
Right,
rather
right.
than like, yo, those weirdos are rapping, like
Right.
they're never gonna make it. They were curious, like it was
Yeah,
and
they
it made
were.
it feel like it you weren't accepted, not accepted, but in a way you were just like, oh, we can talk, like it's
Yeah,
you know.
yeah.
And I think that was always
It's
really
true.
it was always really exciting for us. I felt like, because it felt like, oh, we're putting on a show in a little bit of a way, you know, like
Yeah.
it's and-
Yeah. Yeah, I'm grateful. You're right. In hindsight, I'm grateful that it was not more hostile.
Definitely.
Because I don't know if I would have. I don't know if if it was more hostile, I think maybe my illusion might have broke earlier. You know. You know. So now, you know, at where you are today, do you feel comfortable being who you are in America?
more than ever.
Mm.
More than ever. But I'll attribute a lot of that to I've made my job and my life doing the work in a lot of ways. Like I've used my energy and my professional time to learn about what makes this country tick, and I find it super fascinating. Like it's and I feel comfortable now because I feel like I've got all this legwork I've done in the back that can speak for itself, and it's not in the form of pieces and live shots and being on TV. It's literally lived experiences of being there and seeing that thing and talking to that person and saying like, no, I get it, or I may have not got it, but I at least understand what they're saying, you know, and I can empathize. I'm so grateful. I try not to like. You don't ever want your identity to become your career and your career to become your identity. But at the end of the day, I owe this job and this work so much for being able to give me that thing that I chased so much in life, which was just perspective and understanding.
Yeah.
And that's why I feel like I haven't worked a day, you know, because like I'll be grinding, but it's like I find it so engaging. Like this is
Right.
so interesting, and like even if I'm not doing something on like communities and immigrant communities, even if I'm doing something like a true crime story where I'm thrown in a town or a neighborhood that I've never been to before, like it's a slice of life, man. Like and that is something that I found so like, whoa, here you've got this little world where people live and they grow up, and like I had this story never brought me there, I would have never come, you know.
Right.
And so I'm comfortable.
Yeah.
was the question, are you comfortable with yourself?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
There's always things that you want to work on and fix and change, I think.
Mm.
But I'm really comfortable with the progress I've made.
Mm.
Is that fair?
That's fair.
Yeah.
And I think that's the meat of it. I think the process is where we get the most growth and wisdom.
And I think really acknowledging the fact that this life will be that work in progress, right? Like, it's not like you're not gonna wake up one day and be like, no, I solved it.
Yeah.
It's like,
well, those mornings are that leads to the days that you fuck up.
right.
Yeah,
For sure.
When you wake up thinking you know everything, you're in for a surprise.
Right.
You know,
definitely. Life will humble you quick. That's for sure.
Yeah. You know, if there was something you could say to the 12 to 13-year-old Ashan, what would be something you would want to say to him? You can think about it. Yeah, anything. Yeah.
First of all, work harder. You're an asshole. Work harder. Like, 'cause you're a bum. Like,
Right.
definitely work harder.
All right, like your parents weren't saying that enough.
They were
right?
saying
Like,
it enough, but I feel like if I heard it from myself, like, oh, like it's
Right,
maybe I
sure.
should really work harder. Like, we
Sure.
didn't work harder because it was an act of defiance at the end of the day.
Right.
And learn Hindi, bro. Like, it is my biggest shame. You asked me if I'm comfortable. My biggest shame of my life is not how un-American or un-American I may be perceived. It's how actually un-Indian I feel a lot. And how the older I get, the further and further I feel like I'm getting away from where my family and my ancestors are from. Like, I worry about having a kid one day and not really knowing how to show them that place in a genuine way without pointing to one of my cousins or my parents or my family members and being like, hey, do you mind helping me explain this?
Right.
It bothers me so much I can't speak in my mother tongue. It's like my biggest shame in my life, honestly. If I could change one thing about myself, I knew my mother tongue. And I've always really admired you for knowing yours, because it's...
I spent a lot more time.
You spent a lot
China,
more time,
right?
but
So
I think, man...
that's a hard comparison, because if you look at a lot of other Chinese Americans, they also...
Yeah, and I think we could talk about our own community's drawbacks within this country, and that's a whole other podcast, probably.
Again, I think this just goes back to wanting to be more American, though, right? I feel
Right.
like I feel like your parents would have encouraged that a lot more if they thought like that was gonna make you more.
But now my
American.
parents are so ashamed that I don't know Hindi.
Well,
you know what I'm saying?
Right.
It's,
But that's what I mean. Like, we have to push through for success first, and then look back to do the work.
I wish I realized how important it was that I need to know my mother tongue. But you saying you had more time in China.
How are you supposed to know? How you supposed to know,
Bro, you rap in Chinese.
Yeah,
I
but
remember
that took many years.
But
to
bro,
get there,
you put the
know?
work in, first of all. Secondly, I remember when you started doing it, how much you were made fun of for your accent, the way you were
Right.
saying words,
Right.
and you stuck with it, bro. In fact, you stuck with it so much, you moved your ass back to China and like lived it. You know what I'm saying?
Well, there's a lot of reason for that, but I think
But it's this idea of doing the work, and I think one thing that bothers me about, like, I communicate for a living.
right.
If you take America out of the equation, there aren't many other places I can do what I do, you know? And
Well, I mean, learning a language, I think you can pick that up. I think the skill of storytelling is the skill that's lacking in most people. So
sure.
you
I
know,
appreciate that.
yeah.
Thank you.
You know, I think, okay, you know, I think this, even in your two answers of what you would tell your 13-year-old self is stuff that like he should do, you know.
Are we becoming our parents?
Yes, right. Like,
Like,
so, but like, what I want you to try that again, but tell him something. Tell him a truth that you know now, you know, that would help him at that time.
Do it for yourself. Do it for yourself. I think I spent a lot of time trying to make people proud.
Parents.
Parents, friends, family members. They were always proud. And I never really appreciated that. But I think that added motivation and fire from within, like, it took me a long time to realize that you were really going to find it fun and you were really going to love it when you started doing it because your heart was telling you to do it. You were doing it for yourself, you know?
Yeah.
I think when you stop trying to please other people, you stop trying to do things that you are not, you know? And I think so. I think that is, and that's what I think I mean by work harder is do things because you want it for yourself, you know, like not because you think your dad wants it for you, your mom wants it for you. I remember being a kid, I used to tell everyone I was going to be a lawyer one day because that was what I was told. You're definitely not being a doctor. You're an idiot when it comes to math and science. Like, so okay, you're going to do law. And so I would just tell people that for years. And it was never true. It really was never true.
Right.
I thought it was. You know, you convince yourself it's true. But, like, at the end of the day, like, when we started making music for the first time, not that I was any good, but it was this idea of, oh, I'm doing this for me. And, like, just because it's fun as hell. And, like, you know, and it's, that was really freeing. And I guess that happened, like, at a pretty younger point in our life. But at the same time, like, the pressures of life, right? Like, with the get a job, find a career, make something of yourself. I think that clouded a lot of me finding that again.
Yeah.
And I think it wasn't until I was doing what I'm doing now that I was like, wow.
Yeah.
This is cool, you know?
Yeah. I think maybe doing work for ourselves is the harder work.
Yeah.
You know, it's easier to follow like someone else's idea.
Totally.
Even if that literally requires doing stuff that we don't like doing.
Can I ask, what would you tell your younger self?
Yeah. For me, it's been a year and a half of like a lot of like healing, you know, and I would tell myself if that Bohan would listen to me now, I would understand me, I would tell him you're loved. You're very much loved and very much cared about. Maybe people don't know how to show it.
Right.
But yeah. So yeah, I think that's it, man. That's like, I appreciate you sharing a lot of your story. I mean, there's a lot of stuff I didn't know, you know. Like,
yo, bro, I feel like we could just keep talking now.
I know, we could. And you know, for me, this is like a limited series where I want to talk to people in my life. But if in the future I find, you know, that there's a demand for it, we'll do this again.
Yo, this reminds me of sitting in the Volvo back in 2 a.m.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the reference is when we're in high school, neither of us smoked weed or nothing. We would like sneak out at like 2 a.m. I pick him up in my old 87 Volvo that was loud enough to wake up the whole neighborhood, and he would sneak out, and we would just walk around downtown Boston and just talk about our dreams. And such vivid nights.
Bro, that was like such like raw rebellion. It felt like, you know, like we weren't doing anything bad.
I think we were finding ourselves. I think rebellious is what our parents would have seen it as, and we've been taught to see it from their angle.
Right.
But I think for us, we were like staying up late. We saw some truths that we had in each other that we recognized, and we were trying to figure out what that was. Totally.
And I mean, I just remember like walking down Boston, the Com Ave in Boston, and like seeing college kids partying and being like, "Whoa, that's crazy!" Like, look at those kids; they're out of control. You know?
Yeah.
I think it was just a part of that idea of seeing different, gaining perspective on the world, man. Like, and we were both intensely curious, man, and I think that was what made that time of our lives so like formative.
Yeah.
You know? Love, bro.
Mr. Singh, I appreciate you.
I appreciate you, man.
For people that want to follow him, it's just Ashan.
At Ashan, yeah.
Tell people how to say it right.
Ashan. If you're my mom, it's Ashan.
Ashan?
But, yeah. If your family, it's Ashan.
Yeah.
But everybody else is Ashan. It's Ashan.
Here we go.
Yeah.
And go listen to The Great Wall of America.
Yes, sir. Run that stream up.
And drop us a message. Don't be a stranger. And until next time, this is Bohan Phoenix. We have Ashan Singh. Take care.